Hello YouTube and welcome back. I've got a great build for you here today and I've got a nice story that goes along with it. So at face value, this is a multi-strike, multi-smite paladin build scaling Electrify. We're not doing spell damage, so we're not using something like a devotion amulet. We're not trying to keep our mana nice and low for that purpose. This is a super clean league start build or a season start build. Like you can play this build from absolutely zero and scale it up just like I did here. The caveat on that point, of course, is that the Uber Aberoth endgame unique items, I had those ahead of time, so I just slapped them into this build, and it turns out they work very well. But outside of that, I think this build is amazing on zero budget, and it's scaled up very well, and it ended up being the favorite build that I've played so far on the 1.2 patch with the addition of Uber Aberoth here. So I want to talk a little bit about why I played this build, some of the things that really stand out to me, one potential bug that might be in the build as well, and then kind of talk about the leveling stuff and some alternatives, especially like gearing alternatives when it comes to this build as well. If you're interested in iterating on this build and taking this build and seeing what you could do with it instead, there's lots of little pivot points that we'll talk about during the gearing section later. So very first thing that I want to talk about is why I played this build. I started out playing a Smite Fissure build at the very beginning of patch 1.2, and I wanted something that could take on Uber Aberoth so that I could learn the fight, have a guaranteed kill where the build's not getting in the way, it's just me not having player skill getting in the way. So I could learn the fight, get better, and have some kind of build that I know allows me to do that. So the first build that I knew about was Uber Aberoth's, the first softcore kill was Erasing Strike. So I pivoted over to a VK Erasing Strike build. I bonked my way all the way to Uber Aberoth. I got a pretty good version of that build and I farmed the boss for quite a few days because it was a lot of fun for me to play that character. My second goal of patch 1.2 was to do some kind of like off meta build, something that is not like an established character, something that I can brainstorm and take to Uber Aberoth myself because I already know the fight because I played Erasing Strike in the past. So this is my attempt at that. I had a couple of different builds that I pivoted off of into this. And not only is this build absolutely beautiful, so it's kind of addicting for me to actually play the character, but it has really good offense, some interesting defense, it dual wields, and it's not garbage by dual wielding, which really stands out as a highlight to me. We'll get to that in just a moment. Yeah, this build checks a lot of boxes. If you've seen my content on YouTube before, you'll know that I've done some like this is the most beautiful build in last Epoch, doing some like healing hands, divine bolt stuff. If you want to spend one skill point and make this build feel similar to that build, you can do that as well. I pivoted off that because I wanted as much damage as possible, but strictly speaking, if you want some divine bolts in there, spreading Electrify stacks for you, yeah, you can absolutely do that, and it makes the build even prettier. So this build's great. I've been enjoying it a lot. It has really nice clear speed, lots of quality of life. It is able to get to Uber Aberoth. If you're interested in something that puts Uber Aberoth on farm, go play Falconer, go play something that kills Uber Aberoth in 50 seconds or 60 seconds. Don't play this, but it can. So that was my personal goal there. So before we talk about interesting offenses and defenses, I want to say some other things here. So there might be a bug in this build. Whew. Okay, let's go punch the damage dummy, or the training dummy, and show off what the bug in this build might be. All right, so pivoting over to our character here, we're looking at the Champion's Gates. So we're gonna punch this for just a second. I have my foot of the mountain here, so I'm gonna be standing still. And let's just hold down right click. We're not gonna worry about clicking holy aura or anything like that, but we're just gonna see what kind of damage numbers pop up. So you see like 7.3 mil is like the highest number that I see. There's 7.4 maybe. What else is in there? 7.0 if I hold up on right click. Okay, so you see those kinds of numbers, and you see the boss training dummy is taking a lot of DPS here. So let me remove a node real quick. In Smite, we have this node called Unbalanced Scale. Typically, you'd spec into this, and then one of the benefits of going lightning is you get this because it gives you very good clear speed. So it says Smite hits also have a lightning bolt cast at 3 nearby enemies, dealing lightning damage. It doesn't say other enemies. I certainly thought that this node was other enemies. But for just a moment, if I take that node off, you'll notice that my damage is quite a bit lower. So I'll hold down right click for another 5 seconds here. Huh. It's like 5 mil was like the highest number that I saw. 4.2 when I hold up right click. So I and other people that I've talked to certainly thought that this node was only other enemies, but it doesn't say other enemies. So it might be a bug, might not be a bug. Maybe it's intended that this hits on single or like double hits on single target as well. I didn't know that. So maybe at least one of you didn't also know that. But your brains are bigger than mine, so you all obviously knew that. So obviously common knowledge, don't worry about it. All right, so take that node, it gives you significantly more damage. Got it. Let's talk about interesting offensive stuff, and then we'll talk about interesting defensive stuff after that. The earliest iteration of this build for me was using a Aurelius, and listen, you're gonna see my my skill points click around a little bit, but let's put this thing over here. So my I had an Aurelius, and then I had a Countenance of Majasa Shield, and then in my Paladin Mastery I spec'd into all the different block stuff. This is an absolutely crazy amount of tankiness. You can easily get to 100% block chance with the help of a block chance blessing, and then you just have smites going off whenever you get hit because you're going to spend points into Vengeful as well. So 100% chance to retaliate on hit, and like even if you AFK and go respond to your boyfriend or girlfriend talking to you, your character is still just smiting things around them and not dying because he's so incredibly tanky. So this is a lot of damage, or sorry, a lot of tankiness. We're talking about offense though. So after this, we kind of capped out on how much damage we were getting, and we were thinking, how do we get even more damage than this? So we pivoted into one of the new items introduced in patch 1.2, which is Weaver's Gift. And I happen to have one here that has a lot of crit multi, some lightning damage, and it also has some pretty good rolls, or I guess pretty bad rolls of the penetration as the very bottom line of text, along with chance to electrify on hit. So not electrify on spell hit, but electrify on any hit, and we have lots of individual hits here. So the crit multi is important, of course, because in the Paladin skill tree, we say more lightning damage over time per 2% crit multi. So putting this thing on gives us a nice way of scaling damage, gives us a little bit of duration, and then importantly, it also gives us damage leached as health from damage over time. So this is an option for you for like how to, build your character if you'd like to. Between the two of these, each one is about the same amount of damage, but I think Aurelius wins out because of the extra smite levels that I happen to have on mine. It's also easier to make a good Aurelius because it's LP instead of being Weaver's, which is just so hard to get a good Weaver's item in my experience. So that was another pivot point for our build. After that, we ended up pivoting into a wand instead. So the rationale for this, let's back up for just a moment because we're talking about interesting offensive components of this build. First up, we were looking at these two idols that I have on the very bottom right side of my screen. Somebody in chat was looking at this version of this build as well, like some kind of Electrify Paladin multi-smite thing, and they were saying, why don't you use the idols that give you a lot of extra damage? So it says chance for additional multi-strike swords. And it seems as though these chance for additional multi-strike swords do not go above and beyond your cap. So if your cap is like stacks 2 times, stacks 3 times here. So you have 3 maximum stacks of this, and then 1 maximum stack if you have this for ultimate of 4. You can't get to 5 by using these huge Raye idols here for additional multi-strike swords. But while we were testing that, we did also slap in our Foot of the Mountain, and after moving around a couple pieces, we realized that Foot of the Mountain with the minus mana cost allows you to stay at your 4 stacks. One down here, 1, 2, 3, 4 armaments. It allows you to stay at that 4 armaments even longer so that you can have all that extra damage. So let's put an Aurelius on for some movement speed, or sorry, for attack speed, and I'll show you what this looks like. So my mana goes nice and low, and then it pops back up because I have some nodes in multi-strike that let me pop that up. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down. So the more uptime that you have of being at 4 stacks, the more consistently you can stay at a high damage level, and then it ramps up over the duration of the Electrify. So it behooves you to have something like Foot of the Mountain with a minus mana cost there. But you can do even better by using a wand. You could use a scepter as well, because scepters have access to minus mana cost, especially if you seal it on like an exalted thing, but then you're not using a unique instead with LP. But we ended up trying to use a wand. I really honestly don't have a particularly good one here. I've been trying to farm a better one. So ideally you'd have like double T7 prefixes, and like the best of the best would be using something like a Tribo Electra, which is kind of cute, but a Trib is only particularly good if you get 3 LP or 4 LP. So outside of like extreme scenarios, I think you'd be totally fine playing this build with just a wand, looking for like double T7 prefixes or 7-6 or 6-6 prefixes, something along those lines, with crit multi and elemental damage over time. Crit multi again important because of this node in Paladin there. So this is the version of our offenses that we leaned into, trying to get as much minus mana cost to accommodate the smite extra, smite extra mana cost, along with multi-strike costing extra mana with the Blade Storm node, which is the focal point of this build, obviously, because that was buffed in 1.2. We talked about the offenses of this build, and I want to pivot for just a moment to talk about defenses of this build as well. Something that really stands out to me in the past of like talking about Paladin builds is Paladins, historically, before Season 2, were really squishy. And it doesn't really make sense because you think of Paladin, like the war guy, the knight guy, you want to think that, oh, he's really tanky. But he didn't have a particularly high ceiling of defenses. Enter patch 1.2, and all of a sudden, even VKs are pretty tanky, and Paladins have a lot of tanky defensive options. We are not using a shield. So there's a huge detriment to not using a shield. Not only are we not scaling block, but we also take 9% increased damage, because in last Epoch, when you dual wield, you get punished for it before you even scale the rest of your character up. This is a dual wield character, and hopefully in the footage that you saw at the beginning of this video, you see that we're pretty flipping tanky. In the clips with normal Aberoth, we tank the normal slam. With the tier 4 Julra, we tank the slam just by standing there with no rebuke or anything. And then I guess no rebuke during the normal Aberoth. And then during the Uber Aberoth fight, we're using rebuke quite a bit, but we're also getting hit by basically everything. And it's just a matter of me being able to stand still and apply my damage sufficiently to get the fight done with. So not a super high DPS build for single target, but you saw that we had about 7.4 mil ticks for my version of the build, and then DPS or ailment builds tick twice per second, so it's about 14 million DPS if you're just standing in one place. I'm very impressed by the defense of this build. I think it's really, really cool to play a dual wield build that has relevant defenses that can just tank slams. And of course, some of that comes from the Shattered Worlds with the 10% less implicit there. Some of that comes from this thing, which is basically 29% less damage taken because it's taken over time instead. And then, sorry, not Vengeance, but Multi-Strike with Multi-Smite. Those smites are healing you a lot, and you can recover that, taken over 4 seconds very easily. It's just cool to have options. I'm not used to playing dual wield builds that feel tanky, and it stands out to me, so I want to talk to you about that. Let's see, we talked a little bit about leveling, what the various iterations of this build look like, but suffice it to say, if you're interested in playing this build from like the very get-go, like, you don't need much. First of all, Aurelius is a super common item. If you wanted to play this build before you got Aurelius, I promise you it would still feel fine. But Aurelius is like the linchpin of this build. It's been in the game before, but now we have even more support for Electrify, extra affixes here, and specifically the extra Electrify, lightning damage over time, and the crit multi-scaling that Paladin got in past Season 2. So a lot of cool stuff there. Let's talk about the skills. We'll go through like the normal build guide stuff, skills, mastery, and gear here. And then I have one more thing that I want to talk about at the very end with all of these extra fluffy gear things in my inventory. So for our skills, we're talking about Multi-Strike first. The coolest thing about Multi-Strike is that it's a real skill. So that's amazing. Thank you, EHC, so much. I'm curious from a design perspective. Would you ever play Multi-Strike without taking this node here? I think the answer is no. Is it okay to have a skill in an action RPG where you always, every single time, have to take this one node? That's up for you to decide, or EHG to decide. But I certainly would never play Multi-Strike now that this node is added. I would never play Multi-Strike without this node. It's just like, it's crazy. It's so good, allowing your Multi-Strike bonus swords to shotgun on single target. Especially because when we turn them into smites, we have our smites multi-shotgunning on single target as well, which is an incredible amount of damage. Whether you're playing like VK, Smite, like a crit build, or you're playing this, or Electrify, or Ignite, or even just like crit fire damage, anything. It's just, oh, it's so good. So for our build, we experimented with a couple things. I can tell you for sure that this node is not good. Do not take this node. It makes your mana worse. It makes your damage worse. It makes your quality of life worse. Do not take this node. I'm not sure what it's doing over there. For us, we are willing to spec into Doctrine of Anvil. It takes us from 3 smites on single target to 4 smites on single target. You have less attack speed, but just build more attack speed and you can overcome this. So don't worry about that. We do put 2 points into Bladed Focus. You will be needing this. And then if you're using a shield, just spec some extra points into Vengeful. So we have 25 points. A lot of the nodes in Guarding Stance and Way of the Sword, they're kind of fluff. You don't really need these points. I've got 2 points and an extra bonus point here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, like 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 points that don't really do anything and 2 more that are like spec'd up here. You got a lot of flexibility with multi-strike. Don't worry about it. Next up, the star of the show is Smite. We already talked about some of the funny business going on with this thing shotgunning on single target. That's news to me. You already knew that though, because your brain's huge. So what's the benefit of playing Smite as an ailment applier? So in case you don't know, like new players checking out last Epoch, generic more multipliers do work for ailments. So this is a 250% more damage multiplier for Smite. And of course, were you doing an ailment? We're doing lightning damage over time in the form of Electrify. So this is 250% more lightning damage for Electrify there. We only put 4 points into Atonement because I skimp around the edges. 4 points is fine. Your health is going to flicker down and up, but don't worry about that too much. Just 4 is fine. The benefit of turning Smite into a Electrify damage instead of a Ignite damage source is that if we are Electrified, we can scale Electrify chance and we can scale Ignite chance at the same time. Of course, we also get all the lightning damage over time synergy that's in the Paladin skill tree, and the crit multi gives you lightning damage over time. So that crit multi scaling as well. So there's a lot of reasons to be pivoting into lightning damage instead of just like Ignite stuff. And then, of course, we get the Charged Hand, giving us a bunch of duration and penetration. And then this node for double hits. So yeah, just like the lightning version, I think is where you want to be here. We have some Electrify chance, some Ignite chance that gets converted into Electrify chance. And these 4 points up here, which kind of explain why for my particular build, I put +4 to Smite on my Shattered Worlds. So for me, I really wanted a way to cleanse myself repeatedly, the same way that you've obviously seen lots of Judgment builds this patch stand on top of Uber Aberoth and just cleanse themselves over and over and over and over and over, which allows them to stand in those frailty pools. So my damage pattern, my playstyle during the Uber Aberoth fight was similar to what a Judgment build would look like. Just stand on top of the boss, be tanky enough to get hit a couple times, and then cleanse yourself over and over and keep applying that damage. So that's what I was looking for with this playstyle. If you're not doing Uber Aberoth, take these 4 points off, put them somewhere else instead. Or maybe even don't put +4 onto your relic and put crit multi onto your relic instead. So that's 2 skills there. Next up, I want to talk about Symbols of Hope. Symbols of Hope is a great pivot, or it is a great segue for talking about why we want to be an Electrify build instead of being a Ignite build. If you were in an Ignite build, your Symbols of Hope would only give you this one Ignite node here, which is a 150% chance to Ignite on hit. For us, we get to use the Ignite node and the Electrify node because the Ignite gets converted into Electrify chance here. So we take all of these extra points and it gives us what, 300% chance to apply on hit, which is just amazing. So we have 20 plus 5 points. So we have +1 point from the Shattered Worlds, +2 point from the Nihilist Amulet, which frankly, a Nihilist Amulet is like, it's pretty farmable. Like, I know it might be out of reach of like the most casual players, but like an okay Nihilist that happens to have 1 LP on it, like if you're gaming, this should be like a real goal for anyone. Like, I know it's like Uber, like Aberoth, not Uber Aberoth, but it's still like a pretty attainable item in my opinion. Let's go back to Symbols of Hope. We have 25 levels, and we're going to talk about this later on when it comes to gearing, but Orion Sunseal, I think, is a great addition to this build. So when we get chunked for a whole bunch of damage, we get like a free activation of our Symbols of Hope without me having to manually click it. So I think that's a pretty neat thing to have. It also has like some other relevant stats on it. And even just the +2 to Symbols of Hope, each plus level gives us 30% chance to Electrify on hit, which is 60% total. So it's just a ring that has a good defensive component on it. It's got armor, symbol gain rate, healing effect, and then it also has 60% chance to apply on hit. And then if you get one with 2 or 3 LP, then this is a nice thing to have. 203 LPs line up with you farming red rings, especially if you're playing in COF, because you're going to do prophecies for unique rings. And while you're farming your unique rings, you'll find naturally some 2 LP or 3 LP Orient Sunseals there. So that's our Symbols of Hope. Then we spec up to the top for +1, down to the bottom for +1. Next up, let's talk about Holy Aura. Holy Aura is not doing too much for us, but I think it's the most relevant skill. It also gives us plus damage to Healing Hands, gives us more damage per specialized buff skill. That's a buff skill, and it's good enough. So the extra resistance and endurance here, we're using this. The elemental resistance, because of the Paladin skill tree, gives us access to this, which I'm not spec'd into, so pretend I didn't say that. Importantly, we're also grabbing all the more damage up here, or sorry, all the increased damage here, some bonus penetration, and the attack speed. So like, it doesn't do much, but I think it does enough, and I think you're just willing to spec into it. The last skill is Healing Hands. So we kind of have 3 DPS skills here. We have like Multi-Strike, which is dealing a little bit of with a little bit of Electrify damage. For example, we have a chance to Electrify on melee hits on our Rayless, and we have some generic Electrify chance in the Paladin skill tree, and over here, like the Electrify, generic Electrify on hit. But Healing Hands is a fire skill, so Electrify on fire hit, lightning hit, doesn't quite work there, but Healing Hands has these nodes on the far right side that give you a lot of clear speed. So some bonus chance to Electrify on hits, and then this Holy Winds node. It's got a lot of text on it, but basically what it says is if you have 2 monsters that are next to each other, one of them has 10 stacks of Electrify, and the other one has 10 stacks of Electrify. If you can spread from one to the other, and then from one to the other, they'll both put their 10 stacks on the other. So instead of 10 and 10, you'll have 20 and 20 on both of them. So it's a really nice bit of bonus clear speed there. Doesn't do anything for single target, but it's still fine. In terms of defense, especially against the Void monster Aberoth, you'd like to have some less Void damage taken, so this is great here. I have it as a melee hit, because if I get it as a melee hit, then it will Electrify on melee hit with the Aurelius there. And then we have the minus mana cost nodes over here, and it's nice to have an iframe where you take no damage while you're moving, so that you can just like move through some dangerous things in a precarious situation, like during the Uber Aberoth fight, for example. So those are your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 skills. Let's talk about the Mastery 2. We are using a sword, so we're going all the way to the top of the Sentinel skill tree, grabbing this bonus attack speed. These nodes down here make a lot of sense, doesn't need much explanation. We are dual-wielding, and then we're using our multi-strike skill to gain a percentage of our missing health. That's a really cool buff. I'm glad they added that to the game. And then the mana. And of course, the mana is very important because it's a mana-hungry build. I have 6 points into Void Knight because I'm trying to get my Void res up to about 115. Because 115 allows me to make full use of my Null Portent, less damage taken. And then 0 points in Forge Guard, unless you're using a shield, in which case you might consider using the Steel Aegis node. And then in Paladin, we are, let's see, what are we doing here? The important, I'll call it the important ones first, and then I'll call it the fluff ones that you can kind of flex around later. Conviction gives us lots of penetration. Valor gives us some flat health and endurance. So we have a lot of access to percent increased health off of things like a Null Portent, or even like your percent increased health and your hybrid health and your belt. And looking for like a few extra sources of flat life from nodes like this, to me, makes a lot of sense. I like this flat life here. So if I got like flat health on my Osirian, maybe I would have spec'd something different, but I really wanted flat life, but I hit Fizz res instead on my ring here. So getting some kind of flat res along with endurance is great. We don't have much less damage taken from critical strikes. We are using a helmet, the Leonine Great Helm here, for 75% reduced, but we're not using anything on top of that. But on the other hand, we are blinding most all enemies because we have lots of good coverage and lots of attack speed, lots of small hits. So we should be able to blind things very, very easily. So this, along with a tiny bit of crit reduction, should make you good in that regard. 5 points here, basically just for necrotic res, but it happens to give you some other relevant stats too. 5 points here, more damage to Electrified. We put all 10 points into Holy Precision. Previously, I had been using a different relic that had plus 50 critical strike multiplier on it. But after I took that off, I needed to get more crit multi from a different source, so I ended up putting points into this instead. I've seen other people use an Electrify build and try to put a whole bunch of points into Void Knight, specifically because it helps you get Leech. Note, this build actually has 0 Leech in it, and we did Uber Aberoth. It's a little bit tricky because our damage is a little bit low compared to other more meta builds, but It's doable. It's very doable because you want to be cleansing yourself repeatedly with Smite. And because of that, you're also healing yourself repeatedly with Smite. Combine that with relevant defenses from the rest of our gear, and you get like a pretty tanky character that doesn't actually need leech, and it's pretty cool. So I do like that. We have 6 points in this. I guess some bonus electrify chance, but the 5 points is the most important here. The 5-point bonus is more lightning damage over time per added crit multi. After that, we have some Reverence of Duality for a bunch of relevant stats for us. It gives us about the same life, I guess, for my particular build. It gives me about the same life as putting a bunch of points into Prayer Aegis instead, but then we also get the bonus of the increased damage, the healing effect, and some bonus mana too. 5 points here feel wonderful. This is increased effect of everything that Holy Aura and everything that Symbols of Hope give you. Remember, Symbols of Hope gives you a 300 ailment chance along with a bunch of other benefits. So this is pretty cool. And then, you know, above level 90, I've been speccing a couple points into this. So let's talk about fluff points and where your fluff points might go. These, I'm calling them fluff points. Oh, I actually skipped one, didn't I? I apologize. I can't read. You can read, or at least you can watch a video. Divine Essences give you reduced damage over time you take by 5%. So I previously had a bunch of points spec'd into Covenant of Protection, but strictly speaking, these should be just better. Having about 4 points in Divine Essence gives you pretty much maximum uptime of having all 3 of these, which gives you 15% less or reduced damage taken. It shouldn't be reduced. That should be less damage taken. I don't know what it is, but it should be, yeah, damage reduction by 5% times 3. So yeah, these are absolutely something that I'm happy to take here. So I'm glad that Twitch helped me learn how to read. So our fluff points, once you get to like level 90 or something, you're like kind of putting a few more points into your skill tree. So Covenant of Protection is a good one. These ignite points here, remember all of your ignite chance becomes Electrify chance on Smite, which is the brunt of our damage. And then even some bonus attack speed up here could be relevant for you as well. If you're looking for more flat health, Prayer Aegis is fine. It's a good one. If you're going for a shield version, then 100% you would be taking these shield nodes as well. And you'd be super tanky, wouldn't you? So that is the mastery there. Let's talk about the gear, and then we'll talk about the exciting part, which is all these items that I've pulled up on the screen here. So for our helmets, we're looking for things like Healing Hands and Electrify Chance. I think Healing Hands is a good choice here. I see you have 27 levels, which is 4, 5, and then 6, 7 from Nihilus. In our Healing Hands, if you didn't have +4, for example, you'd have to be trimming like maybe a mana cost node, but mana cost is important for us. You could be trimming some of these defensive nodes in the top right, like 1, 2, 3, and then maybe a mana cost node, or like maybe a Electrify Chance node. You could do that as well. You could opt not to turn it into a melee skill. That's another option if you want to trim around the edges. Or maybe you like using an unspec'd lunge instead of using the Healing Hands iframe movement skill up here, like the immune to damage while moving. So there's a couple nodes you can trim on the edges. I'm greedy, so I wanted everything. So I just took everything and put +4 on my helmet. You know, I guess alternatively, you do like T7% health and be even tankier than I am down here. But the Electrify and Lightning skill hits, flat health, percent health, things along those lines of what you're looking for. For our body armor, I think Null Portent makes a lot of sense. Holy Aura, along with like the rest of the Paladin nodes, gives you a lot of access to resistances. So things like Annihilus gives you plus to all resistances. There's a blessing for plus to all resistances. It's pretty easy to get a whole bunch of resistances. And even like I have one idol here for 23 void res just to get a little bit closer to that 115 mark to get that bonus less damage taken. What tier 7 modifier do you want to use Null Portent? I opted for tier 7% health because I want to be as tanky as possible, and we have a lot of damage already for like an ailment build. I don't think you'd want T7% chance to apply on hit because we already have a lot of percent chance to apply on hit, and we scale pretty well by just being alive and standing in place and not having to dodge too many things, and instead just, you know, repeatedly healing ourselves, cleansing ourselves, and just like standing in place with our minus mana cost from Foot of the Mountain, for example. We'll talk about our 2 weapons. We talked about this earlier in the video as well when we were talking about like the interesting offenses. So you can scroll back to that portion of the video if you'd like to. We're prioritizing crit multi because 2 crit multi gives 1% more damage for lightning damage over time. Ellie Dot is a good place to be as well. For our Aurelius, we were previously using an Aurelius that had T7 multi with Ignite on it. The T7 multi with T5 melee attack speed feels much better. We have a lot of access to ignite and electrify and hit, especially thanks to Sigils of Hope, and just having more attack speed feels really, really good. So I made that pivot personally when I was using a Weaver's Gift as well, because it's like a little bit higher base attack speed, that 1.08. But when I pivoted to this thing and used a 1.02, it's just a tiny bit slower, and I wanted more attack speed, and it ended up being definitely the right choice. So I'll pass that information on to you. For our belts, you don't want poison damage. That actually doesn't do much for you, believe it or not. So you can go cleanse as a prefix, you could seal cleanse, or you could just say smite's going to be my only source of cleanse, and instead I'm going to only do like elemental damage over time, and lightning damage could be your other prefix here, and then as much HP as possible. If I could make my perfect belts, I would of course have sealed cleanse, and then T5 lightning damage, T5 LE dot, T7% health, and then T5 hybrid health as a suffix there. For rings, we're using an Osirian plus a Orion Sun Seal. I think Osirian tends to be like a little bit overlooked, even by like end game gamers. Like, it has less damage taken. It has chill, which my build otherwise doesn't have access to. It just makes bosses move slower. It has shock, which means they're going to be more prone to getting stunned, which might happen if you're playing a good build. And then 10% more damage, because we're attacking a lot. We have a lot of shock chance, and it's very easy to get 10 stacks of shock on the enemy. So it's not a red ring of Atlaria, which is, what, 10% less damage taken, but it's 2 or 3 or 4% less damage taken. It's got more damage on it, and importantly for me, because I'm looking for more damage, it allows me to put extra modifiers as a prefix when I LP them onto my Osirian here. We're going to talk about this in a moment. We're going to talk about attunement stacking after the gearing section. We'll get there, I promise. For our gloves, we're looking for something that have a bunch of attack speed and life on them. If you're not having access to Immortal Vise, honestly, I would just use Wingguard. Something like a 1, 2, or 3 LP with maybe bonus attack speed. Or if you're playing in hardcore, I would look for T7 hybrid health first, and then I would evolve as I continue getting more and more LP onto my Wingguards there. Foot of the Mountain, for me, I'm actually boot swapping. I'm boot swapping my Blood of the Exile for the most part, because it puts me up to 94 movement speed. It's just a really fast pair of boots with relevant text on them. And then when I do bosses or like any kind of relevant single target fight, I'll pivot off of 94 down to 63 movement speed, but it gives me more access to minus mana cost, which means I can sustain those 4 stacks of multi-strike armaments for even more damage. So I can show you a little bit what that damage difference looks like. Currently, I've been swapping my gear around, so don't worry about what the damage number is. Just note the comparison between the damage numbers that I'm about to show you here. So it looks like, without looking at anything else, sort of like without holding down like Holy Aura, what are we at, like 6.3 or something? At 6.3 nil or so. Somewhere like that. Alright, so let's put on our Blood of the Exile. And Blood of the Exile means that we're gonna be bottoming out more often. So I show you the comparison here. So we were like 6.3 before, and now we're what, like, what are we at? I'm gonna let it bottom out like 1 or 2 more times. Like 5.1, 5.3. Yeah, like 5.3 or so. Okay, so that's the difference between having the minus mana cost stuff available to you there. Look at that damage. Oh, it's so good. Let's talk about our gear. And then last would be Shattered Worlds. We're using this because it has less damage taken. It really doesn't do much for us, but it has increased effective Frenzy, and Frenzy is relevant because Nihilus gives us our Frenzy. So when we really want damage, we want to barrel roll into our enemy with our Evade button, and then we have bonus attack speed, and even bonus attack speed because of this thing here. We're not using the crit. We don't use the attributes. The +1's fine. The haste feels good, but it's the less damage taken as the implicit that feels great. If you wanted like a budget, quote unquote, replacement for this, you'd be using something like a, oh man, what's it called? Twisted Heart, probably, because Twisted Heart has a bunch of life on it. It has a bunch of strength on it. It has +1 to your elemental skills, and then you could just LP it, like crit multi onto it as well. So honestly, a 1 LP Twisted Heart with T7 crit multi or T7 like Smite, yeah, that's probably what your alternative is until you get one of these. So I haven't put too much thought into it, but like that's probably what you would end up doing instead. So that does it for our gear here. Let's talk about idols as well. So someone told me, they made me very sad, because they made me realize that Sentinel idols are really quite mediocre if you're not playing a VK. Which pains me, and it's true. If you're playing like a Judgment healing effect build, you can go healing effect prefix on a 2x2 with block effect suffix on that 2x2 idol, and that's a very good idol for you to be using for that build here. I'm not scaling healing effect, and I came to the conclusion that what I'd like to do most with my idols is actually just use like these ones here, like these 20% chance to ignite on hit. So 20, 40, 60, 80, and then I use a couple of these because I'm trying to get some relevant Weaver suffixes. So Weaver suffix of like 7 crit multi is what, like it's 2 with 3, it's 3.5 more damage. Sure. Armor mitigation applies to damage over time. Reduced damage taken from critical strikes, somewhere thereabouts. So there's our armor right there that we're looking at. What was 9,000 armor? Yeah, so idols are really boring, but just anything with like a bunch of ignite chance on it is kind of what we're looking for. The most important thing that I call out is this one right here. So the suffix is chance to apply frailty on hit. I have no frailty on my character, and having frailty on an idol is amazing. So I'm going to be using this on every single build. I love having frailty on an idol. It's a great quality of life thing to include in your character. You can ultimately get it somewhere else. You could seal it somewhere, but having an option is always nice. So I like this kind of thing. Let's go to blessings real quick. We have crit multi because crit multi is good. This thing gives us lightning damage. Cool. All res here. Percent increased armor. Obviously, if you're using a shield, you swap this into block. And then flat armor here. That does it for the character. We could talk about the very important cosmetics because this smite is really pretty. I do like it a lot. Okay, so the more important thing to talk about is everything that's down on the bottom right corner of the screen. So these are like alternatives to how you might want to be gearing your character. And I think it's really fun to talk about this kind of stuff because it kind of means like your version of this build could be different or better or worse or have different quality of life than mine, or maybe you just try a different version of this build. So one of the most exciting things for me about Paladin right now is that in the Paladin Mastery, we have these nodes in the middle that gives us health regen per attunement. We have an endurance threshold per attunement, and then we have even some flat regen over here and some flat regen from Symbols of Hope over here. So we have a lot of stuff that kind of makes me wonder if a Vessel of Strife might be a good choice here. So Vessel of Strife is not so hard to farm these days because you don't need to do the tier 4 temporal sanctum over and over, but you can because you can use the portal charms to farm it. But you can also grab the what is it? It's called a dungeon. Where are the dungeon nodes at? These dungeon nodes here. Nope, not those dungeon nodes. Where are the dungeon nodes? Are they, yeah, these ones. Okay, so I just spec'd out of them. But if you're interested in farming vessels or foot of the mountain, for example, this Warden's Echo makes it really easy to just like go about your normal affairs, and also you happen to be farming these dungeon unique items at the same time. So I love this node. It's a little bit rippy actually. It's kind of dangerous because the monsters are scary, but it's a very good way of farming those monsters without having like a dedicated farming session. So I do like that. For this, there's kind of a suite of items that might go along with it. So like you would be stacking attunement, presumably, right? Because we talked about the attunement stacking here, the attunement stacking here. So you'd be stacking attunement. This version of the build may end up being a Red Ring of Atlaria build as well. It may end up being a Wall of Nothing build instead of using a Null Portent. So Null Portent does 20% less damage taken. This thing is like 12% chance to take no damage, but it gives you ward scaling instead of not having ward scaling. And then you'd have your bonus attunement, or sorry, endurance threshold per attunement from Prayer Aegis. And then of course that becomes ward decay threshold with Wall of Nothing. And then if you're opting into Defiance, you get more endurance threshold per uncapped elemental resistance. And as a paladin, it's really easy to have a whole bunch of uncapped elemental resistance. So that's a cool way to go about doing it that you could opt into if you wanted to. Why am I not using these items instead? I was thinking hard about whether I wanted to be like double red ring, T7 attunement, trying to get up to the 180 threshold point. And that I really thought that I just needed more percent increased damage instead, which is why I ended up having this. So I've got my T7 LE dot with damage over time, T7 LE dot with damage over time, just trying to get as much damage into this build as possible because I was skeptical about how much damage I would actually have. So my goal was to get to Uber Aberoth, and my character ended up being very tanky, I'm glad that it did, and we didn't need a Red Ring of Valeria to get to that point. So I love having options, and this is just another place where like Last Epoch allows us to have build variety. Like we have this thing that looks very good, but it has an opportunity cost of not using other things. Like I don't get chill in my build. I don't get, you know, extra LP to get more damage or percent increased damage. Or maybe it would make me, you know, put attunement or strength as the prefixes on my gear instead of having these other things, or instead of just focusing on flat life instead. So it's fun to think about it, and I'm glad that there's options out there. I didn't end up doing this, but if you want to try this, you could. Other things to talk about are the belts. I opted into a Praetorian belt, which has up to 250 flat armor. 250 flat armor is about the same amount of armor that you might get from a grand blessing here, which is a lot of flat armor. So for us, the alternatives would be like an Orion's Descent. Orion's Descent has this like chance to cast Smite on hit, but realistically, it's like 6 smites every 10 seconds. And you can do more than that if you just like chug potions, which is like awesome if you can kill the enemy within the period of time where you have your potions. It's also awesome if you're not using your potions for cleanse, right? So I guess you'd want cleanse on your belt if that's going to be an argument, but you know what I mean. It's like using your potions offensively instead of using them defensively. I think Orion's Descent stands out a lot more for having up to 25 intelligence on it for like intelligence stacking builds, or even like red ring builds that really are just like stretching to get extra attributes into their build, into their character. So it's an option. It gives you more damage, it does, but it costs you 250 flat armor, and it also like you need 2 or 3 or 4 LP, whereas I can just like put the affixes that I want on this, including poison damage, because that's really important here, isn't it? The other build that I was, the other belt that I was using earlier in this character was Viper Tail. Viper Tail is slow on hit, which is relevant sometimes, and it also has melee attack speed up to 10%. So we're basically a melee attack speed build. It's a more multiplier for stacking all the ailments on the character, but I wanted more defenses instead and more access to percent increased damage. So I think the Praetorian belt ends up being a pretty good choice there. We talked about a couple of things here. We talked about the boot swap. Also talked about this and the idols. If you don't have a Nihilus using something like, honestly, like your level 0 build, like picking up items off the ground as a new character, a Jade Amulet, it has attack speed on it, and you put crit multi, and you put elemental damage over time. So that's like your level 0 item. LPing that onto a Bleeding Heart gives you another source of leech. That seems like a great place to be. But realistically, just Nihilus is what you look for there. There are people in chat who've been advocating on behalf of Static Shell. Static Shell gives you another more multiplier, up to 15% more lightning damage to shocked enemies. It is more damage, but one of the things that I've really enjoyed most about my character is that it's so relevant and like defensively. Like I can just tank things like normal Aberoth Slam, Tier 4 Jewelry Slam, and a lot of different things from Uber Aberoth as well. It's like get hit by everything, please. So you can get more damage off this. But it would cost you moving your character from side to side, and that's boring. So who enjoys doing that, right? That about does it for the character. We talked about a lot of things here. We didn't talk too much about leveling, but honestly, let's like, man, if you go like multi-strike, spec into smite, and just like start playing the build, you're gonna have fun super early on. I'd be unsurprised if anyone told me that this was their season start character and they just really enjoyed playing it. Real briefly, I know this is the very end of the video, but I want to tell you that I was surprised that this particular build, like some kind of Electrify multi-smite thing, like surely somebody would have played this build early on in the patch. It turns out this node was bugged. I don't know exactly what's going on with it, but like it lowered your attack speed by more than it was supposed to. Someone said that if you ever took this node, your build is permanently bricked, even if you spec'd out of it. So I guess because of a bug, I understand why there wasn't more popularity of multi-strike builds at the beginning of the 1.2 patch. But here we are right now. The bug's been fixed. This node feels good. Again, don't do it. Don't take this node. It's not good. But this node's very good. So it feels great to use. Yeah, so I guess on a personal level, I fucking love it. Like, it feels great to take a build that's like not an established meta build and bring it all the way to Uber Aberoth. We learned a lot along the way. We learned some things that might be bugs. We tried a lot of different variations of the character, and like we found something that we settled on, and then we juiced it up and took it to like the final boss. So like having that kind of like story behind a build, like that's exactly what I want from an action RPG, and it just makes me so happy to play a build that not only has all those components to it, but it's also so fucking pretty. Have you seen this build, dude? It's so good. Cool. If you're playing this build, if you experiment with it, or if you iterate on it and make it better or worse than mine, please let me know in the comments of the video, because having that kind of feedback is always really fun. This video has been rambly, been a lot of fast talking. Hopefully it's been good information. If you like that kind of stuff, leave a comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.